Uh, yes, very good evening, everyone. I welcome on behalf of ISC Daily Chapter each and everyone to this great session where we have amazing panelists lined up along with a great moderator. Uh, Thank you so much for joining the session on a Saturday evening, and making the learning fraternity, actually get encouraged with your participation and joining the session. Uh, I would like to welcome all the students who have also joined from various B schools and people from the industry, fraternity from the ISTD, past national chapter chairman, and also regional vice president Purin Daniel sir, and many other dignitaries who are present here. Thank you so much for joining. Uh, we have today, the session wherein the topic is about future of workplace, role of learning and development. So that's a topic which we have, and so we have with us now our chapter chairman Mukesh Kumar Jain sir. I would now like to request him to start off the session formally with his welcome address. Over to you, Mukesh Jain sir.
Thank you, Yashwant. Good evening, friends. I am on behalf of Management Committee of ISTD Delhi Chapter. Welcome you all to this Young Leaders Series panel discussion on future of workplace, role of learning and development with Ms. Alka Rai as moderator, Ms. Anu Sethi, Dr. Vartika Datta and Kena Shri as panelists. Friends, Indian Society for Training and Development ISTD has celebrated its Golden Jubilee recently. ISTD maintains a large chapter network of more than 46 chapters and 8,000 institutional and individual members. The society is affiliated to IFTDO USA and RTDO Manila. Friends, during this Golden Jubilee year, ISTD is offering 50% discount in the life membership. You can enroll yourself paying less than 5,000 rupees, rather 4,779 only for life membership. For more details, please log in to istd.co.in or istddaily.in. I once again welcome Ms. Alka Rai, Ms. Anu Sethi, Dr. Vartika Datta, and I have been told that Ms. Kena Shri is not able to log in because of network problem, for which Mr. Yashwant Chauhan will tell you. To ISTD, all the past national president, our Honorable National Vice President, Mr. Daniel Kurian, chapter chairperson, NC member, senior member, and friends from ISTD, NIPM, and HRD, ISTD diploma students, faculty members, and students from New Delhi Institute of Management and other institutes. I wish you all a wonderful evening and joyful weekend. Over, Namaskar, over to Yashwant.
Thank you so much, sir, for your great words. Now, I would like to, go to Alok. Alok, can you just put up the slide for the moderator? Next one, please. Yes. Great. So I would now like to have this great opportunity to welcome our dear moderator, for the evening, Ms. Alka Roy. She's the Deputy Director, Talent Management, Learning and Development, OD at Pepsi Co. She has worked previously with companies like Flipkart, Genpact, IBM, Nextlink. She has done her executive program in human resource management from IIM Calcutta. She is basically having 14 years of experience in the space of L&D and in the talent management, solving the people and performance-related organization challenges. She also has the ability to forge strategic, collaborative, and consultative partnerships with business, HR, and hiring teams for organization success. She is a bronze level certification holder from Kirkpatrick 4-level evaluation certification program. She is also an NLP practitioner from New York Academy, and she is also a certified trainer and facilitator from CAMI. And she's also highly skilled at setting up learning architecture, designing learning interventions, with proven business impact. Great to have you, Alka. And also, she believes in the fact that being a keen learner herself, she completely believes in the fact that change is always an opportunity. Results are impactful when voiced by stakeholders, and success always feels bigger when shared. So thank you so much for such a great belief, Alka. I hand over the entire session to you for a very energetic and very meaningful session ahead. Thank you so much. Over to you, Alka.
Thank you so much, Yashwant. First of all, a big thank you to ISTD for bringing all of us together. From various streams, we have esteemed guests from various organizations. We have a lot of learners, students as part of the group, and we also have a few other people in the group who've also been working in organizations. So it's a very, very, I would say, a motley group of learners today. But I think all of us are united in the objective that we'd like to take away from this discussion some insights for the learning and development field in general and what the future holds for us. In the next 20 minutes or so, with the help of the esteemed panel members, we'd like to surface some of those insights, and your questions following it will help us ensure that all of you have adequate insight into what the future holds for us and how best can we stay prepared for it. With that, let me introduce my panel members as well. Could we have the next slide, please? All right. It gives me an immense pleasure to introduce our first panel member, Anu Sethi. She currently heads talent management at Unominder Group. With a talent management certification from XLRI Jamshedpur in her kitty, a fellow avid reader as well. She comes with a very, very strong acumen in business, organization, and HR. She comes also with about 2 decades of HR experience, which I'm sure all of us can learn a lot from. And given the fact that her experience ranges from a variety of industries, right from manufacturing to service sector, where she's played a multitude of roles, including in HR, operations, and as a strategic partner, Anu, we look forward to really tapping into your expertise and hearing a lot from your experiences and what it is that learners of today and learning and development professionals of today can take away from you. So welcome to the panel discussion. The second esteemed panel member for our conversation today is Dr. Vartika Datta. She's currently an assistant professor at the Indian Institute of Management in Amritsar and has similar esteemed roles that she's held with Goa Institute of Management, as well as the Asia Pacific Institute of Management. What's unique about Dr. Vartika Datta's experience is also the fact that while her current expertise is in the area of education, she's also worked as a talent and development manager with Citi Financial Consumer India Limited. So welcome, Dr. Vartika Datta. We look forward to tapping into your unique expertise in and insight into the field of education and learning and development. So those are the panel members today. But before we get the conversation started, I think one thing that perhaps, one word rather that you would have heard from everyone, one word that perhaps has become almost like a constant for all of us is change. 2020 has been a year of change for us. We're looking at 2021 today, but that change hasn't stopped. There are some long-term changes that all of us have experienced in our workspace, in our home life, whether it's the coming together of work and home time for us, whether it's Zoom meetings like perhaps today, whether it's the line between work and home sort of diminishing. And if you ask me, learning and development / education sectors have played a great role in enabling this change as well. Whether it's the breakneck speed at which learning and development teams quickly transformed organizations in terms of online learning being available, switching completely away from in-person training programs to online learning, whether it was about ensuring that all employees felt engaged when there was a lot of ambiguity around and answers were not clear in terms of future. So learning and development and education have played a great role in keeping organizations together, keeping groups of people together. And in the next 15 minutes or so, with the help of our esteemed panel members, I'd like to touch upon some of the areas which have been very, very critical for all of us and which will continue to play a big role for all of us as we adapt to this new norm and make the best use of it. So with that, I'd like to invite first Anu Sethi to perhaps share her thoughts in terms of what is the biggest shift that you've observed in the learning landscape over the last year.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Alka, for introduction. And thank you, ISTD, for giving an opportunity to speak at this forum. And thank you all the participants and all the panelists and everyone in ISTD for giving us an opportunity to express our views on this topic. So there has been a lot of shifts. So the biggest shifts which we experienced during pandemic was that beer makers and distilleries shift their production to hand sanitizers. Engineering and automobile companies started making ventilators. And due to hindrance in global supply chain, we became more familiarized with slogan called Atmanirbhar or Made in India. And first success towards Atmanirbhar was production of PPE kits, COVID testing kits, and similarly going ahead, there has been a paradigm shift in the commodities and raw material localization in segments like electronics, semiconductors, chips, etc. In terms of learning landscape, we have seen that 29% of organizations increased their investments in e-learning during the year 2020, which is a huge investment if you ask. Then organizations like Amazon's announced $700 million investment on upskilling their employees. And coming back to automobile, where actually I lie, where my bread and butter comes from. So learning has changed, not this year, learning is changing from years. So if we see that we started with graphs, PPT, moving to dojo centers. I'm not sure you are aware about dojo or not, but dojo in Japanese means place of the way. In Japan, dojos are used for teaching martial arts. And in automobiles, dojos are simulators for workplace. So automobile is changing the learning from classroom to dojo centers. So before any employee joins in, he or she spends a time in dojo centers where they learn how to work in production lines before they actually are put into production lines. So simulation was existing before this pandemic came in. So we were well versed, we were well aware that there are changes which automobile industry is going through. And what is the major change which we see in auto industry from 2008 recession is that first then when 2008 recession came in, the first cost which was cut was learning and development cost. What changed in 2020, which was the biggest paradigm shift, was that business environment is different and people started spending on L&D during this pandemic. They thought this is an opportunity for reskilling, upskilling their employees. And this is the time where we can learn, unlearn, and can grow in the organization and make people ready for the next role, next skill which an organization is looking for. So I think pandemic had make us virtual and faster. So that's on my take on biggest paradigm shift, Alka.
Sure. Thanks so much, Anu. I think very insightful. This is one word that I'm going to take away from your answer today, which is a dojo. I think I knew what a dojo is, but in the manufacturing setup, a simulator where you can practice skills and shorten the learning curve for employees, I think that's incredible. So thank you for sharing that. With that, I will move on to Dr. Vartika. So Dr. Vartika, I know that you are currently in the education sector. Have these paradigm shifts been as immense in the education sector as well? And if you could shed some light on what those shifts have been like.
Sure. So first of all, a very good evening to everybody, and thanks a lot, Talka, for giving that introduction, and thanks ISTD for giving us this opportunity to discuss this point, which is so pertinent not only for the learners who are for the future, but also the current learners who are themselves seeing that how to navigate their own future careers. So having said that, and I was listening to Anu and her views as to how this landscape has changed in the manufacturing sector, coming back to the sector that I belong. So if we see for a very long time, B school learning, we have been, toying with the idea that how is it that this gap between industry and academia can be fulfilled? Well, we see that there are a lot of things, gaps which are existent. So this particular time when COVID happened, it was a kind of shift which was forced almost for all the B schools and for all the schools, for the all the stakeholders working in the educational sector, to see that how is it that we can now talk about learner engagement in a new shift altogether, in a new paradigm shift that is happening. So we had to quickly digitally transform all our courses, all our way of kind of evaluation, examination, everything required a new impetus, so to say, a new way of looking at things. And there are now, we see that the industry which we see were there, in suddenly there is a mushrooming of the space, the tech and the education space have come together, and we see so many new job roles coming in, so many new competencies coming in. So as educators, we had to now think that how do we power pack our pedagogy, how do we power pack our offerings so that we not only give the core functional skills to the students, but also make sure that the three critical C's that we constantly talked about, collaboration, creativity, and probably critical thinking, how do we make sure that all this is together? And now that everybody is learning in a remote place, the entire education was happening remotely, we also were actually forced to think about this fact that although we are talking of the population, we as a premier B school, we have a huge set of learners coming from different segment of society. So the access to technology is not same. So although we are saying that the digital is the new way to go, but is it really something that we can do? And how do we then look at spaces, look at ways at how we can still keep the learner connected, but keeping in mind that there are a lot of issues at their end that they are facing. So as educators, we had to constantly grapple with a lot of issues, but I believe 1 year down the line, we have a lot of learnings which have come to us, and we are now seeing that we are very adept and in forming models which are hybrid. So we have in-class modules, we also have out-of-class modules, which we have to now work and shape our entire offering into. So those would be my 2 cents on whatever how the learning space has changed.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Vartika. I think I completely resonate with that. I'm sure for a lot of us, last year was more about just managing and tackling the new change. And this year is more about staying afloat and setting up those practices which will help us perhaps future-proof, some of the skill sets that we are building. So absolutely spot on. With that, I think the other thought that I'd like maybe Anu perhaps to share her thoughts on is, specifically in the auto industry, what have been some of the enablers from a learning standpoint that have helped you navigate the new normal? Whether it's from an industry standpoint or perhaps there is something which is very specific to the auto industry itself.
Sure, Alka. So as we talk about automobile, we hear two common words which keeps on listening, and everyone here must have listened, like EV and AV. EV is electric vehicles, which we are listening. It's a talk of the town right now. Then AV is autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars, so which is little far future, but yes, we are listening to it on a daily basis. So when it talks about technology, technology is heart and soul of automobile. We have seen how cars have changed over the years, from Maruti 800, which was non-AC car, to climate accustomed cars. We have seen a lot of changes coming in, right? From connected cars to shared mobility. We are seeing a lot of transformation happening in automobile. And change is something which is very, very frequent in automobile. And if we don't change, we are out. So while this pandemic was there, so what was the biggest learning, what was the biggest thing which we have done as an organization, is that we have seen what inside. So what to upkeep with the changes which we are seeing in automobile, we have gone through an OBT exercise, which is organization business transformation journey. What we have done, that this was an year where we have time, where we can invest on people, we can invest more on learning and development. So we have gone through a complete OBT exercise, in which we have done a virtual assessment centers for all our employees till a managerial levels, and we seen that what is the right person for the right place in the organization. So during that assessment centers, what we have done, we have reworked on the RASIs of employees, we have recreated RDs and KPIs, we have strengthened our internal capabilities. Then we have actually aligned ourselves to a group goal. So when I say group goal for HR is that we want to limit the external hiring to 5%, which is very unheard of, I believe. No one says that we will not hire from outside, but that's the organization group goal is that we want to restrict our external hiring to 5%. So more focus comes to learning and development. Means we have to develop 95% of people from inside. Means vacancies arising from expansion, where as an organization, every year we go ahead with the having 7 to 8 plants across India and globe. And then obviously there is some attrition, which actually bring us some places where we have to fill it. But not hiring from outside means developing internally. So we have L&D programs from workers till the top management. So we have schemes which talks about associate to staff. Associate we call as workers. So workers to staff policy. So we believe that a person who is performing as a worker can always move to a staff level. And there are a lot of examples in our organization where you will see that people have moved from associate to staff. And lot of contribution of this happen because we have a strong learning and development internally existing. And because of that, people are groomed from workers in such a way that they go through 2 years or 3 years of our training program, in which they learn, they develop themselves, and then move to staff, and then to a manager level. Till managers, we see workers coming in, those who are like ITI passed and all. And then we also give them an opportunity to learn, go for education if they want to. All those supports we give to them. But during this pandemic also, during this tough year also, we have not let our guards down. We have not changed our goalpost. So we still believe that 5% is the only target which we want to hire from external sources. And during this pandemic, what we have, our academy is transformed to e-learning centers. And obviously we miss our classroom trainings, but yes, a strict calendar is followed this year also. And we have launched a much awaited LMS, which we call as Learning Hub, where we launch our online modules, which we thought would not be successful. But yes, this pandemic has given us an opportunity where it has come up as a successful product for the organization. And we were able to launch a lot of programs on our Learning Hub, and it has been successful. So associates also, workers also go through learning and development programs through this Learning Hub and online training programs. And then as an organization, we strictly follow 3 principles of Gita, which says discipline of learning, discipline of speaking effectively, and discipline of equanimity. What these 3 talks about is discipline of learning is that leaders have to be effective learners. So this is followed till down. Learners, we create learners, we ask people to learn, unlearn, and keep on upgrading their knowledge. Then discipline of speaking effectively. Communication is the most important piece which we believe in. And as we have seen that leaders like Mahatma Gandhi or JF Kennedy or Swami Vivekanand were good communicators, and they were able to move people towards their vision. So we had maximum town halls during this year. and where we see that there are capabilities where people can't connect through town halls like our workers and all. We have videos floating across the organization on WhatsApp where CMD was talking about the importance of learning, not panicking during this time, and we are united. So all those things came up as a very strong pillar in the organization like ours. And last but not the least, we talk about equanimity, which says that there are good and bad times. So we should never be very happy with good time, and we should not be very sad with bad time. So L&D budget remained as it is. We have not changed anything during this year. We had cost cuts, but nothing changed in our L&D space. Yes, because of online module, yes, there has been some spends which has been less, but yes, we have not changed. So I believe that's what you will see as a little different from in automobile industry, where we start everything uniformly from top management to worker. Everyone go through the same process, same procedure, same learning curve. So that is what I say is little different in automobile industry. Alka.
Sure. Thank you so much, Anu, for that thought. I think the chat window is abuzz with a lot of questions coming in as well. I'm picking up on one comment that perhaps will tie this whole thing up very, very nicely, which is by Mr. Anil Goswami around employee engagement. And I think somewhere that has been a shift as well for a lot of the training and learning and development teams. As we've moved into the pandemic, the role of L&D has actually, initially it expanded to keeping employees engaged in terms of online learning, in terms of continuous learning, in terms of giving them some foresight as to what kind of skills will become important shortly. And the investment in LMSs, the investment in virtual learning or educational technology, I think is one great indicator how this space is proliferating very, very quickly. So thank you for that very, very inspiring and insightful answer, Anu. I will now move on to Dr. Vartika. So Dr. Vartika, you alluded to how there's now a hybrid way of really engaging students in your world, right? Now, as students adapt to this hybrid way of participating in classes, virtually or in person, what are some of the shifts that you've observed and enabled for them as learning curators, as teachers to this particular cohort?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mantra. Actually, if you see this space of learners that we are talking of specifically to the segment that I currently cater to, we are talking of learners who are used to personalization. So they talk of Netflix, and then Netflix is also, based on the recommended systems, they have their own pocket-sized things that they want to watch. If they don't like, they just swipe right or left. They're very used to that kind of thing, doing that kind of thing. Now, when it comes to education, we also felt that there's a need that as educators, we need to rethink and rewire our curriculums, because we are catering to this generation which is having which is very used to having very focused way of looking at things. So we understood that very soon it might so happen that we are going towards a shift which is almost a disaggregation of college degree. What I mean by that is that we are talking of continuous education. We're talking of lifelong learning. And a fact that we could see is that almost every LinkedIn page of any B-School student that you pick up, you will see that they're going for micro-credentialing or, micro-certifications. So although the courses that we teach similarly remain, so we had to constantly now see that how can we update ourselves, how can we upskill ourselves by networking with industry, networking with researchers across the globe to see that what's the next big thing happening in our own area. So we need to shift our focus from very narrow to very broad. And as I said, that we have to make sure that with the core skills, that core functional skills that we are giving to our learners, they also need to be adept and understand that remote working is the way to go. But the digital platform skills is something that has to come in every functional domain. So suppose I teach subjects in the area of OB and HR, but we cannot say that, now OB or HR is something which is just the aspect which is very much focused to the skills. We know that even analytics or digital skills is something that cuts across all the functional domains. So synergizing is something that is very important, which as educators we have realized. And most of our offerings in our courses, we have realized that we keeping the learners engaged is becoming a major issue. I'm sure these learners, when they go as employees in the kind of organizations that you all are heading, that becomes a challenge there also. So keeping that in mind, today, when we are preparing them for the next future of work, we need to make sure that we are also giving them enough space to pick and choose the kind of electives, the kind of courses that they want. And also we know that we are open to this change, that there is a need that they will be going for small bite courses. So we had to go for a complete review of our curriculum to see that how can we give them small bit-sized courses which can which would be like which would be helping them to get their own core skills, but also setting a lot of impetus or emphasis on the new software skills like trust, like communication, like remote working, empathy. These are things that we are almost talking of in our daily deliberations with students. And another big thing that we realized is that authenticity. And while I was teaching remotely, I could understand that all of them were grappling through a lot of other issues. So as teachers or as educators, we need to be very sure of the fact that today we are talking to a learner who is actually grappling with a lot of issue at their end also. So that humane touch probably of the educators, which was somehow got missed by just going to the classroom and delivering our lectures and coming out, we now realize that if that is how we would go about, we would lose this entire generation of learners very soon. So that is why we all had to don a role of a counselor, we had to don a role of a teacher, we had to don a role of a mentor, and more educational participation is something that is necessary. Another big change that we observed in the education landscape is that we talked about flipped classroom. We have been talking about this term so many times, but this was during the pandemic, we realized the importance of it. That, we kind of, if we decide that today we will teach this particular topic and we go in the class and we wonder that why are they not speaking? That's because, you have not given them the pre-module to read, to understand, because now this learner wants to see that what is the next thing that is there for me. So keeping that surprise element, but yet giving them a chance to really know, to really read, because access to information is so easy for them, that on a screen, when we are attending a call, when they are on a Zoom call attending a class, they still have access to a flurry of information. So we have, from educational creators, we should now become educational curators, because a lot of thing is there, but just giving them everything together and making sure that, so those shifts in pedagogy, those shifts in our way of looking at things had to happen. And educators who could do that, I think so, are the ones who have really connected with their learners effectively.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Thank you for sharing those insights, Dr. Vartika. I can very easily link this to how the role of an L&D professional has also evolved as more of a learning curator, as opposed to somebody who creates learning right from scratch, creates content from scratch. Because to be honest, all of us have access to a lot of content on our phones. If we are looking for a quick piece of information, we don't necessarily go to think of a learning and development professional. We think of using Google or looking for that information online. That's how easily accessible it is. But all of our roles perhaps are today more inclined towards what is the best way to filter out information which doesn't add value in the same context, and what is the information which will make perfect sense in a given context. And this possibly also links to Anu's point of, a dojo way of training or a simulation way of training. I know there was this one comment online around mentoring. So all of that is more about contextual learning, right? And that's essentially what all of us in the space of learning and development, in the space of education, are really gearing our people towards. So with that, I know we have about 3 more minutes before we jump into the Q&A. One question that I'd open out to both Anu and Dr. Vartika, both of you, is with all this adaptation that we've done in terms of the new normal, whether it's a hybrid way of functioning, whether it's online learning, whether it's Zoom calls, right? This is also an era which is where we are becoming more and more familiar with terms like Zoom fatigue, or being always connected, or continuously learning and being connected. While this is this is the new normal for us today, what are your thoughts on how, as educators, as L&D professionals, what's the role that we can play in an individual's well-being? Because these are some very real challenges that I think organizations are already grappling with. And I think what the pandemic has done is, since it's blurred the lines between personal space and professional space, all of these issues are coming more and more to the forefront. So happy to hear any thoughts around that.
Should I go first?
Should I
Yeah,
say
please go ahead.
first and then Vartika? That's
Yeah,
fine?
I know. Yeah, I know you can go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, Alka, you're very right in saying that it is difficult, right? It is like you are reading and cooking at the same time. So all those things are difficult, and virtual calls, and some people can't concentrate while being at Zoom call. And some stats talks about that there are 50% of workforce in our country which are going through a chronic stress, and 60% even doesn't know about that they are actually going through stress. So as a learning professional or as a talent management, what we have done, that we for an organization has launched a portal, employee emotional wellness support portal, or a platform which is open for all employees across, where there are counselors where people can talk about relationships, leadership, parenting, health, mindfulness, and lot other things. So there are counselors which help them out to stress out. They can speak up, they can express their view. They are 24/7 available, because a lot of time it happens that employees are not so open to talk to us, talk to management. So it becomes easier for them to talk to counselors. So we as an organization had initiated this online platform for our organization. That's all, Alka.
Sure. Thanks, Anu. Dr. Vartika, any thoughts from your end on this?
Yeah, so that's probably a topic which is very close to heart, because it's been now 4 years, and we have started a course called the Science of Happiness. I myself took an training from the Berkeley School of Wellbeing, and I got certified as a life skills coach from there. And by doing that, what we have now realized is that even this set of learners who come to B schools, we are almost reading researches which says that we almost create very narcissist students at B school, pass outs. So we realized long back that there is a need, that this emotional intelligence is something that when we talk of so much, that is something that is almost like a necessity now. So I have myself, with one of my colleague, we have developed and curated a whole course on this, and you'll be very happy to know that for the last 3-4 years we have had almost 100+ subscription for this course. And what we essentially deal in that course is that when we talk of well-being, it is not just emotional. We are talking of emotional, we are talking of spiritual, we are talking of intellectual, physical, social, and career well-being. So keeping the entire gamut of things which comprise of well-being, I think so as educators, we have realized that we cannot, really give a blind eye to all that is going on after they kind of graduate from our schools, from our graduate schools. So we have almost all the B schools, we have tried to emphasize on this fact that we have courses, more and more courses which cuts across these domains. Also, another thing that I believe is that as L&D professionals, what we need to understand, till now we were talking of work-life balance, but post-COVID, we now have to talk about the new concept of work-life synergy, because balance is something which almost looks like forced, that you have to do that. But synergy is something that organizations should welcome as a change, wherein, as I said, authenticity, as Anu was speaking, that there were constant town halls wherein the leader would come down and show their vulnerability, because that vulnerable side is something which is very important. And I believe that human resource should now turn and should rename and recoin itself as humane resource, because once we see that in that light, I believe L&D will be more as a touch plus technology standpoint for all the organizations. And I probably very strongly feel that post-COVID, we have to now think of rewiring ourselves to see that, not to see this as a cost center, but as to see it as a development center, as a continuous engagement center, not something which is forced upon, but something which is actually embraced. And once we see that kind of a shift and the mindset change that's needed for that, I believe we will see a whole new generation of purposeful organizations coming in, not only as purposeful educators, purposeful employees, and purposeful organizations, everything coming together. And I believe that would be the new sense of well-being that we should all, talk about.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Vartika, for those thoughts. I think as we get closer to answering some of the questions that have come throughout the conversation, the one thought that's coming to my mind is how, one of the positive things that this entire pandemic has sparked off is perhaps an excursion towards becoming more holistic. Whether it's the learning and development teams or educators sort of stretching and finding avenues to include all types of learning themes possible, whether it's as learners thinking of where all can that learning happen from, whether it's bite-sized, whether it's through some of the edtech platforms, whether it's through our mentors and coaches, or whether it's by just interacting with our social circle itself. It has brought to the forefront the whole meaning of being holistic in what we do. So that's I think a great. Thank you so much, Dr. Vartika and Anu, for your thoughts and for your very, very insightful answers to the questions. With this, I would request Yashwant to kindly help us with some of the questions on chat, and perhaps we can spend some time answering those queries as well.
Yeah, thank you, Alka and Vartika and Anu for your great insights on the topic. So we are, a whole full house, almost we have almost 220 people right now. So I request everyone, first of all, to keep it more engaging, and please feel free to question, to the panel if you want to put it live or continue, doing so through the chat. So I'll just quickly pick a couple of the questions which we have. The first one is from Kashif Jamil, who is asking the question that what kind of organization should an individual in an entry-level position eye for if he or she wants to build a career in learning and development? In short, what are some companies that are suitable for a master's student fresh out of college?
Anu, would you want to answer that?
So thank you, Alka. I can't name some of the organizations which would actually say that these are the right organization which L&D professionals should join. But yes, when you are joining an organization, you should always see that how stakeholders or management see L&D as. Because as an L&D professional, you can never sail through if you don't have a buy-in from the management or the top management. So you should actually focus what are their goals, what are their values and vision. If you see they talk about learning, agility and development of people, then I believe that would be the right organization. I can't name some of them. That would be difficult for me.
Just to add to what Anu was saying, I think another lens that perhaps you can use is to look for an organization which will allow you to explore beyond a very, very niche part of L&D. getting holistic experience early on will allow you to figure out what your choice and natural inclination lies towards, and therefore allow you to become a more enabled individual, enabled learning and development professional in the long run.
Yeah, thank you, Alka. So next question we have is from Monica Singh. And she's asking the question to the panel that how to have successful social learning in the organization. Who would like to do this?
Successful social learning, I would be in an organization where you can shadow yourself with the management, where you get a role where you can shadow someone, or where your career path is defined, where you can learn from people across. So wherever you feel there is learning from peers, that would be the organization where you can learn from social learning. That's what I believe in. So shadowing is something which should be there if you are going ahead with social learning. That's what I feel.
Thank you. Next question which we have is from Vijay Fate. He is asking that what are the significant changes in teaching and training happened due to COVID?
Maybe we can start with Dr. Vartika.
Yeah. So since it had specifically that word on teaching and training, so since I also handle the executive education at IIM Amritsar, so probably that comes at the right time. So what we had to change, as I was talking of while I was just expressing my thoughts, is that we had to now relook in the entire curriculum, entire course. So if I just take one course that I would teach on talent management, what I had to see is that not only understand that how is the future of work changing, so implementing those bit-sized learnings and those things in my curriculum, but also making sure that we use a lot of case studies. So in some of my own courses, I made sure that we got enough business people coming into the classroom and sharing their own insights as to how this entire transformation happened in their organization. So a lot of those things, one good thing that happened with COVID was that we had an access to the entire world. We could get researchers who were working in Norway and come to our class and speak as to what they were doing. Also, some of the niche areas, say, which happens, suppose, in coaching, and we have an international coach like Marshall Goldsmith, and we had access to them, and they coming into the classroom and then talking about their own expertise. So what we could see is that physical distance that was there somehow got narrowed down with this digital transformation that happened. So as educators, we realized that this sort of, the needs that these learners have, we need to keep that in mind, that we have to give them what is happening in the current states, but also keeping in mind that how are we preparing for the future transitions. So as educators ourselves, we had to keep that in mind. For every 60-minute or a 75-minute class module, we would have a lot of things like polls, like breakout rooms, like video bites, like live entrepreneurs coming in and talking to the students. So we had to constantly give them a power-packed session, and every session had to be, as I said, something that the learner would take, which would be unique and which would add on to their things that they're not getting access to from their own end. So we, as educators, we had to keep that in mind. And I believe that's now become like a practice.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Vartika. So Alka, with your permission, I'll move ahead. Yeah, and also participants, I will request you to raise your hand in case you want to ask any live question. We have very exciting panel here. So please feel free to raise your hand in case you want to ask a live question also. So I can see Gurumukh Singh ji raising his hand. Alok, can you unmute him? Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Good evening. Good evening. Very lively session and very lively panelist. One question of late I am getting wherever we talk, and this pandemic has proved it more virtually true. the role of HR is diminishing gradually day by day. And now the human resource at the company has reduced to a great extent. We are talking 20-80, 20% physical, 80% work from home. And maybe a few years back, I always used to say in some research that HR will be a distinct and extinct function over a period of time, maybe after 20 years or 30 years. Now this pandemic has fastened that. How do we like to give the first-hand view from the market? Because you know the better now. What is the future of HR?
I have a little difference of opinion, sir.
Yes.
As an organization, we have seen that this year, the organization only sustained because of HR. Because HR was there standing along with employees during the tough times, during those times when employees can't come to work. They were at home. So HR was one department which was live, which was available at all the times to employees till now. Right, we have a workforce of more than 23,000 employees, and HR folks was available 24/7 to all these people during this tough time. And as an organization, if you ask, top management feels that HR was the pillar who was, because of them, they were able to sustain during this time. So I think so. I have a little difference of opinion where I say that HR has become more powerful, more stronger during this pandemic. That's completely my opinion. If someone else.
Yeah, I think I would probably agree with Anu. Even in some of the new age organizations that I've had the privilege to be a part of, I think the role of HR has definitely evolved. It's changed from what it used to be, where earlier there were very, very clear guidelines in terms of what every role will do. I think today there is perhaps more of a change in terms of these lines becoming a little less clear, and all of us sort of being like, almost like all hands on deck in terms of ensuring employees are taken care of in terms of holistic well-being, in terms of what they will do in their current roles, how do we ensure that they are skilled and repurposed for the future. So there has been a shift in the way role of HR is evolving, and I think that's what perhaps the future will look like. In my humble opinion, we don't know what the future will look like, but most likely it will mean that our roles just continue to evolve.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you, Alka, for also putting in your points. Next, I have Anil Goswami, who would like to ask a question. Alok, I will request you to kindly unmute him. Mr. Anil Goswami, sir. Alok, are you able to unmute him?
Yes.
Yes, Anil, sir. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah. You see, thank you very much for this such a insightful session, and very well moderated also. So one thing I want to say in this, new change, everybody is adopting a new change, especially HR people. They are playing a great role. So rather than little bit cribbing, and we have to now empower more our people. So maintain work-life balance, and we have to focus more on the tracking and monitoring. So, and one thing more, so on the training, we should not treat it as expensive. We should treat it as, investments, so that our people grow more and more. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Absolutely agree with you. I think somebody had raised a question around how stakeholders' role has changed as a result of the pandemic. How much are they involved when it comes to making L&D related decisions? I think if I can, take the privilege to just speak on everyone's behalf, hands down, most organizations today, there's a lot more buy-in in terms of looking at learning and development as an investment, like you said, Mr. Goswami, as opposed to seeing it, a department where, you just put in money and you don't know what you're getting in return for it.
Absolutely. If I can add a point here, I think so capability building not, this is the right time when organizations have realized that what all kind of capability building teams across organizations are coming forth and now asking us as B schools also, we are also, they're reaching out to us to really come up with modules, which, some very hard oil and energy, if I can just, without taking names, some of these hard manufacturing sectors also have realized that with the kind of skills which are very futuristic, which is absolutely unprecedented, we need to still keep the employees engaged. And L&D largely has really played the role, but maybe it was at the back door doing that. But now I think so it is in the forefront, taking charge and allowing employees and employers to realize that this is the need of the hour.
Yes, thank you. So next we have Mr. Ajay Kumar Shukla, sir. Aro, can you please unmute him? Mr. Ajay Kumar Shukla ji.
Hi, sir.
Yes, Ajay Kumar ji, welcome to the session. Kindly put your question to the panel. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was indeed a pleasure listening to the panelists. I have a small question, which is like, in this kind of digital age where everything related to L&D is going digital, how or what kind of strategies would you be suggesting for taking care of the learners' learning capacity improvement? Because at times they may get detached from the learning itself and may not achieve the goal. On the other hand, engaging as well as taking care of their mental, emotional, as well as learning capabilities. So a quick response from any one of the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anu, could I request you to take that, please?
Sure. So I think since there are a lot of content which is already available in the market and people are learning through LinkedIn, through different things, right? So as an organization, if we have to put in something, we always believe that it should be quick, it should be engaging, it should be small, and it should give most value out of it. So quickly, we have launched a POSH learning module on our LMS. And after that module, you will not believe it was compulsory for every employee to attend as per statutory law. But after that, all employees came back and told us that on classroom sessions, this was far, far better than that because they were engaged doing it, right? So I think so it should be intelligently selected, and it should be small and concise, and it should add value to people. So that's what I can add.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, if I might just add to what Anu was also saying is that the very fact that they felt that is engaged, I believe that that's solely because that they had the autonomy. And I believe autonomy is something at the state of the learner has become very important, whether in education or otherwise. So small bit-sized modules. Also these days we are looking out for modules which are quick and which are easily platform independent. So something which is small sized and which can be taken through any device possible. So mobility is something that we need to keep in mind, and digitization, definitely small sized e-learning modules are something that the learner would appreciate more than long duration, long-term programs.
Yeah. I think just two things that I can add from my experience, some of the work that I'm currently doing. When it comes to virtual learning, two factors which can play a critical role. One, the timing of sharing that information. If and depending on the employee's life cycle, and this is where we go back to the basics, right? So depending on whether an individual is, let's say, very new to the organization, mid-tenured or senior tenured, and about to make the jump to the next level. Even if virtual learning is timed that way very well and aligned to the employee's life cycle steps, it can work very well. The second thing that we are seeing is also the fact that there is a need for very, very contextual learning. So which means no longer is just a definition of negotiation skills and 4 types of negotiation skills enough. But if, let's say, I'm talking to somebody who's my counterpart in a global setup, and they have certain objectives they want to achieve, I have certain objectives to achieve, how do I bring that together using negotiation skills? That's the context that a lot of learners are looking for. Now, that information can come through an in-person session virtually, or it can come through, let's say, e-learning. That then becomes even more effective. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Alka, for your inputs on that. Next, we have Parveen, who has written a question in the chat box. She's asking, great session. Would be great if Dr. Vartika could throw some light on various engagement strategies she uses with her students while teaching on the various online platforms. So Dr. Vartika, you can put some light on this. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So as I was, I believe I had, touched a little upon that, but the courses that I teach are generally of nature which requires a lot of learning by doing. So keeping that in mind, for each of the courses, I made sure that there was some pre-readings given, and at every small time, so we usually have a 75-minute session. So for a 75-minute session, I would myself keep that in mind, that after every 5 or 10 minutes, I give my learners a chance to speak and express, and also give, as I said, use a little bit of maybe a small bite of TED Talk, maybe a small bite of poll, maybe a small, kind of exercise wherein I give them a chance to deliberate, discuss, and quickly respond upon. And also a lot of us, we realized that in all our teaching that we had to give impetus on role plays. So giving what Alka was saying, that, if we are talking of negotiation skills, giving them a chance to really get inside the organization, see what are the issues, and then giving them a platform to experience it themselves. So this entire just one-way teaching has to now go away, and it is all an experiential based learning, not only for the courses, the HR based courses, but I believe even for some of the hardcore courses also, the educators have to keep that in mind.
Yes, thank you so much. And also, Alka, since we have a lot of people, who have also registered, for the event, right? And some of them, they have put in questions. So my objective is always to keep it as inclusive as possible. So I'll quickly move to the, a question which I've asked through online mode. So the first question is from a CGM HRD from Indian Oil, Mr. Rajiv Ranjan Saab. He's asking that, how we can, ensure the calculation of ROI in tangible terms. Because this is a big debate, on the ROI of learning development. So how do we ensure that, as business leaders, we actually make a business impact on ROI? Thank you.
I think I'd love to jump on this. This is like a topic very close to my heart. And I could go on for like almost 60 minutes on this, but I'll keep it brief. I think a couple of things that really help if ROI calculation or return on effort calculation is something that you're aiming for. One, before you even start on the journey, if you have key stakeholders, key sponsors, ensure that you have in very clear terms and tangible terms, you have clear areas that they'd want to see an improvement in. What I mean by that is, if let's say it's about a topic like, we want to have more trust with our stakeholders, and how it should reflect is with a certain percentage improvement in, let's say, the NPS score, then that is the metric you go for. The second thing would be doing some groundwork, and keeping the same example in mind, there are multiple factors that can affect an NPS score. So ensure that you have a very clear understanding of how much can you actually cause a difference in that NPS score. It'll also depend on the quality of service or the quality of deliverables, right? And that's the biggest chunk there. While you can train employees to perhaps talk a certain way, interact a certain way, deploy certain strategies to build trust and collaboration, the larger chunk of it is not in your control, right? So ensure that, there is that clarity available. Based on all of this, you can then figure out, maybe instead of targeting NPS, can I convince my stakeholders on a different metric, which could be, for example, an org engagement service score, an attrition percentage that you can target, or a retention score. These metrics, once you define, then the journey is very easy. You need to have a right structure, and then you keep measuring for that change every interval of the program. It becomes easier then. So ROI or ROE, return on effort, is largely a game of identifying the right metrics. But of course, Vartika, Anu, please jump in.
I agree with you, Alka. If we have goalposts clear, we know what is the objective behind it, we can always track it. But normally it happens that trainings doesn't define that what is the goalpost, and we keep on doing trainings. And then we say that we don't know what is an ROI. So it should be clearly defined. So if it is defined in the initial stage, then we can obviously can calculate what is an ROI. So that's what I believe, Alka, you wanted to say. So I agree with you completely here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Anu. Thank you, Alka, for your great inputs. Since we are almost in the end of the question answer round, so I'm tempted to ask you just from my perspective, one question, for each one of you. As you all understand that, because of the pandemic, a lot of things have got changed. And in fact, the entire L&D has got disrupted and accentuated, by a decade, I would say. And work from home is a new normal, remote working is going to a new normal, right? But I would like to understand your thoughts on work for all, because now we are talking about work moving from the workplace to the people. Yeah, that is one part. And secondly, working smarter. How do we integrate the humans and the machines through the technology going forward? That's another thing. And the third part, which I will like you to touch upon, is about work for the planet, because as we understand, this new century is going to about the sustainable practices of the business. So L&D is also not away from that. So your thoughts on that would be great. Thank you so much.
Vartika, would you want to share your thoughts on this?
There were too many parts to the questions. I've almost lost track of the questions. But talking about 3 bits, which I believe is important, we talk about the triple bottom line. I believe that's something which we have to talk about when we talk of not just capitalism, but conscious capitalism. So keeping that in mind, planet and profitability have to go hand in hand, definitely. So the 3 Ps, planet, profitability, and people. I believe that's the mantra that every organization has to follow, and L&D professionals have to keep that in mind. And as we were discussing a little while ago about ROI and ROE, I believe all these metrics are important. So the profitability metrics, if we keep in mind that the engagement metrics and the learning centric mindset, keeping all these 3 together and then proceeding in that direction, I believe that's one mantra that all of us have to imbibe by. And whether we are in the space of education, or whether we are ourselves a part of it, or whether we are the organization largely who are creating some kind of programs for our employees, we need to keep that in mind. So that would be my bit on Yashwantji's question.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So with this, we are just ending our question and answer round. So Alka, now it's over to you, to take this forward for the final comments. Thank you.
All right. Cool. Thank you so much, Yashwant. And thank you so much to all of you for very actively participating in the discussion. I think I speak on behalf of the panelists when I say that it becomes very boring if there's just 2-3 people constantly conversing and talking to each other. So thank you for making this as interactive as you did. I think, again, and I will probably go back to where we started from. We started by talking about change and how that has become the new constant. And we've explored this change using the lens of L&D and education and seen different aspects of what this change has meant to us. And while the change has brought in some good aspects to all of our lives are changed in terms of being on Zoom meetings, being on video calls, figuring out ways to perhaps build trust and collaboration with our colleagues and our students and our learners through virtual medium, and at the same time becoming more and more okay with the occasional disruption in the background, even when being on Zoom. So I think that's the new normal for all of us. And the only way forward would also be to constantly be mindful of this change. I think the best thing to perhaps, and when you look at how everyone is adapting to it, there's no one best course of action. Perhaps as educators and learning and development professionals, the one thing to strive for would be balance, whatever that means to us personally, right? Whether it could mean a balance between all our device time versus the people around us, that could be one definition. For somebody else, this definition could be very, very different. But balance is perhaps the best thing that we could strive for just now. So with that, it gives me immense pleasure to bring this conversation towards a closure. I will hand it over back to you, Yashwant. Thank you.
Yes, Alka, thank you so much. Anu Sethi, I would request you to give your final comments on the theme. We had great discussion so far. Would like to have certain points on that.
So thank you, Yashwant. The challenges for the learning people, there were different type of learners which exist, and as per theory, there are 7 types of learners which exist, from visual to oral to verbal to physical to logical to social and to solitary. But as of now, the new normal which we talk about, the only learner which exists is a virtual learner. I hope we will soon go back to 7 types of learners and things would be pretty back. But till the time we are in the same scenario, I would say that we have to balance, as Alka said rightly, we have to balance between work, we have to balance between home, we have to balance between the screen time and fatigue and everything. But yes, balance will go on. But I hope we would be soon back, because as we are seeing the ray of hopes, things are coming back to the track. So soon we would be back, and as an L&D professionals, we would again go back to our online plus hybrid way of learning, basically to online plus classroom learnings and on the job learning. So all those things will start soon. Thank you, Yashwant.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anu. Dr. Vartika, your final, insight on the theme. Any message, because we have so many people from even the B schools, who are joined in this session, people from IIMs, IITs, and NDIM, and so many, people who are there. What is your message to them? Thank you.
Yeah, so quickly, if I could sum up whatever we discussed, I think so mnemonics always work for this kind of learners today. So in terms of mnemonics, I would just talk about the 5 key R's, so to say. So first would be restart. Wherever we were, this year was something that we have all learned, relearned, unlearned. So we have to restart, and the first thing would be that restart whatever the asymmetries are there. And then the second big thing would be repair. There has been a lot of damage, not only emotionally, but maybe on the business per se, we have to repair whatever were the losses, whatever were the heartburns, whatever were the issues that we all have been facing. So repair on that particular context. The third big R would be reconfigure. We have to now think as to how do we reconfigure our working style, our learning style, our teaching style, and what all, kind of things that we do day long. The next piece would be rethinking. How do we rethink this entire piece of HR? How do we rethink this entire piece of education? How do we rethink this entire piece of L&D and everything else that is a part of an employee or a learner life cycle? And the last but not the least is reporting. Reporting the right things, which were, celebrating small wins is always important. So report the right kind of metrics, report the right kind of successes, report the right kind of things that have happened. So I believe this 5 R's pretty much sums up whatever we have been discussing in a kind of, framework for us to this sum up. Those would be my 2 bits for today.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Vartika, for concluding your remarks on the theme. Alka, do you have anything to share, before I move ahead?
No, I think we can move ahead, Yashwant.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Vartika, Anu, and Alka, for your great, engagement in the session, and also, thank you to the participants for keeping it quite alive. I would like to move to the next part of this session now. I'll request, Professor Garg from NDIM. She's here, Dr. Vidya Garg. Thank you for being a part of the session. So I'll request now you to kindly summarize the key learnings, for the entire session. They've had amazing session. So I would request you to keep it brief, but at the same time, please highlight the important ones. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Alo, can you please unmute over? Thank you.
Muted. It's, you said that, Yashwantji, that I have to be brief. There was so much of learning in this session, in this energetic session where, industry and academia came together and brought what we always discuss that it should be. I really thank Alka, Anu, and Dr. Vartika for giving so many learnings, which everyone, be it from corporate world, be it from education, can imbibe. Where, we were talking, Alka very nicely started, where we are talking of purpose of office workspace changing, the lines between the workspace and the family, this changing, artificial intelligence, automation and all changing, what is the skill shift that is changing. And a very nicely coined word which she used is future proofing learning culture. So how do we create that? And we got a lot of learnings from corporate, with a special focus on automobile industry from Anu. And some things which, I really think that we need to carry it forward is, and very, very exciting and very, it was that 29% increase in L&D and upskilling investment. Now that is something which is very futuristic and gives us hope that upskilling and all, where, in any case, these type of situations, first thing is that the earlier it used to be the training cost to be cut in any organization. So now as they put that it is going high, as high as 29%, very exciting. Dojo centers is something which, as Alka also said, that, we knew about it, but the way it is being used in automobile sector, it was really nice too, and we would like to know more, and all the organizations can use it. The organizational business transformation that Anu's organization has gone, virtual assessment centers, strengthening capability, and a very encouraging fact that only external hiring is 5%. So much of importance and focus on learning hubs. These three things which she highlighted, I would like to carry it with me: discipline learning, discipline is speaking, and discipline equanimity. Now this is something which, something which is something all of us have to learn, whether we are in corporate or we are in education. And I, being in education, I think it really works for us. And when it comes to discipline equanimity, because composer, and this is something which we need. Dr. Vartika was talking something which we have gone through in 1 year being as educator. Shift, caps highlighted, how to engage our students, how to motivate them. Everything is looking so gloomy, negative. Students came negative, how to engage them. So her mantra for creating that packed pedagogy is something which I think we need to create, and all the educational institutes can take clue from it. We are also doing it at NDIM, which we started very early in March itself, and how to collaborate, create, become education curator instead of just the instructor. And that's what we are following in NDIM also. And I just got reconfirmed that we are on the right path, where, we have become more of a facilitator than no teacher anymore. And those small modules, skill-based learning, certification, things like this were something which I think personalization, rethinking, and especially Vartika's those 5 R are going to stay with us. That is something which we have to think about, rethink about, restart, and we are doing it. yes, as Anu said, that last year was about problems, about redoing, and this year is about settling and looking forward. In the end, there was a question that is HR going to die? And knowing that HR is not going to die, actually it is there to have to take more responsibility on its shoulders, and much more needed, because emotional well-being, spiritual well-being, happiness quotient, all this matters. There is so much to talk about, and so much I have learned, that I don't think I can talk about everything over here. But thank you very much for such an active, such an enthusiastic, and such a lively session. And finally, what we were talking about, virtual learning engagement, I think this session was full 100 on 100 or 200 on 100 on engagement. So thank you very much. And I thank on behalf of NDIM and our students who are here to bring such a powerful sessions for us. And we would look forward to more and more sessions and your inputs to our students also. Thank you very much. Thank you, Yashwantji.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vijayagar, for those amazing learnings which you have just shared with everyone. I'm sure the entire student community who have joined for this session must have benefited a lot, along with the people from the industry. I thank each one of you for joining the session and making it alive as possible. I'd like now to request Mr. Y.N. Kaushal Sahab to give a formal vote of thanks on behalf of IST Delhi chapter. Mr. Y.N. Kaushal sir is the National Council member of ISTD. Over to you, sir, for the formal vote of thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yashwant, for being the series moderator for this panel discussions. In fact, you have brought a fresh whiff of fresh air to ISTD, and through you we are connecting to a fairly large segment of younger people who are aspiring to be, and who are our potential sort of members in the L&D profession. And so I would begin with thanking Ms. Alka Rai for a very, very efficient moderation. It was so smooth, as if you people have perhaps practiced 5 times or 10 times or so, but but you could say weave in so well together, right? And I would thank Ms. Anu Sethi, bringing in such a good perspective. In fact, Ms. Alka Rai also brought acted not only as a moderator, she was also the resource person for sharing her experiences. And then Dr. Vartika Datta brought in the academic perspective, and also from the academic sector. And so I would greatly really feel that it was very well moderated, very well conducted, and a very rich session. So thank you, for doing this. And we had more than 200 participants, which is a great thing, right? We had younger participants, students from NDIM and also other places. Also our own students, means ISTD has its own diploma program. And there were many of them who were there in the audience, and some of them have asked questions also. Right. I would, thank Mr. Mansell, who is director of NDIM, for jointly collaborating with us, with ISTD Delhi chapter. I see, Dr. Radha Sharma, Dean, is also here, and Professor Vidya Garg did an excellent job of summarizing at the end, and there are a few other faculty members also of NDIM. I would like to thank all the young students who have actually participated in this and got benefited. So that's very, very encouraging for us. because we are looking at how do we go forward and share the legacy, and pass it on to the younger groups and in an accelerated manner. I would like to thank my colleagues from ISTD, many of them from other chapters. We could locate, Mr. Daniel Kurian, who is a National Vice President of ISTD. He participated. Dr. Rajeshwari Narendran, who was past president of ISTD, she also participated. We are seeing so many members and the chairpersons from other chapters who came and joined this. So thank you very much for all of you. There were many members from the Delhi chapter, evidently. There were also so many members of ISTD diploma students, and many people who got the link, and some of them we couldn't identify, but they were there, they are interested, and they are in our larger network. So towards the end, I don't know if I'm missing out some people, particularly I'm not sure if Rajiv Ranjan sir is from Indian Oil, is the director HR of that. He raised a question, and it was very well answered, right? And so I would conclude by giving, my thanks to the managing committee and the head of managing committee, Mr. Mukesh Jain, for organizing these talks. Every week, almost every week, we have some wonderful talk going on, and it's a kudos to his leadership that the chapter has become very vibrant. And so towards the end, I would like to thank our supporters. In fact, the coordinator, Mr. Alok Agarwal, he always does a wonderful job of this. So with that, thank you very much. Thanks all of you. And we look forward to your participation in the future also. Sir, are there any announcements to be made?
Kaushal sir, you forget to, take the name of Yashwant Chauhan, who did a wonderful job.
Sir, मैंने शुरू में ही बोला था यशवंत.
अच्छा, I missed that.
उनको तो शुरू में ही बोला था. यशवंत brings.
He's doing a great job.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your inspiring words, sir. Thank you so much. My objective is always to keep it as inclusive as possible and connect, youth at large and energize the learning and development. That's the objective. Thank you to the entire ISTD Delhi leadership and our mentors, Dr. G.P. Rao Saab and various other seniors from the ISTD for making it happen. I also thank the participants for joining in large numbers and keeping it as interactive as possible. Thank you to the moderator and also to our esteemed panelists as well. Thank you so much. Alok, do we have the announcement?
Yeah, just a minute. Yashwant, let me speak here now.
Yes, sir, please.
Number one, lot of students are here from different institutes. I would request everybody to please join and be associated with ISTD. We are offering life membership. You are very young. It's just less than 4,800 rupees, which is nothing. So please join ISTD as life member by paying only 4,800 rupees. Number two, next week, we are not having any program. Rather, we are having our extraordinary general meeting on Saturday, 7 p.m. So all the ISTD members are requested to join that. 5th of March, on Friday, 6 o'clock, Dr. Akil Basrai, he is a very senior member of ours, and he is past national president of NHRD, will speak on some very relevant topic. So till that, goodbye to everybody. Thank you very much. Thanks Alka ji, thanks Anuji, and thanks Dr. Vartika for a wonderful session. Grateful to you all. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.